Without further delay, coming to tonight's session on making smarter decisions as product managers. Let me give an introduction to our acclaimed and admired speaker of tonight, Mr. Arindam Mukherjee. Arindam is a seasoned technology leader currently leading the product and engineering functions in the retention, engagement, and new growth teams at Flipkart, India's leading e-commerce company. Till very recently, he was also leading the user experience, design, and user research teams at Flipkart and has helped build both of these teams. Before Flipkart, he has worked with travel industry with TripAdvisor as well as in the RFID space in healthcare in the US. Arindam is an alumnus of the Harvard Business School and IIT Kharagpur. A very warm welcome to you, Arindam. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us tonight. Please take the session forward.
Thank you so much, Shama, for the introduction. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in on a late evening midweek. So I know this session is perhaps standing between you and your dinner, and I hope to make it as exciting as possible. And hopefully you'll have some good takeaways for all the product managers who've joined in or aspiring product managers who've joined in. I hope to kind of share my learnings over the next few minutes, and towards the end, we'll have some time for questions as well. So let's get kind of started. I'll quickly share my screen. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of how, as product managers, you can make better and smarter decisions. And why is this kind of important? It's because the way I look at product management as a function, decision making is perhaps one of the most kind of critical value add that a product manager can have in any organization. And if you look at the top 3 skills of a product manager, it's about finding the problem. It's about selling or pitching that this is the right problem to solve and this is the way to solve it. And finally, solving the problem. And during each of these phases, you will be making a lot of decisions as a product manager. So which is why decision making as a skill set is very, very important. But the unfortunate thing is kind of nobody teaches you decision making. You go to business school, you go to kind of any place or any courses. I doubt if you would have come across any courses around decision making. And there's a reason to it, because of the fact that at the end of the day, our brain is actually what decides. And the way we are wired up is all different. The way I am wired up versus the way each of you guys are wired up is going to be very, very different. The way we decide are very, very different. So it's very difficult to actually train on decision making, or so that's the challenge. So let's kind of take a quick question, right, which I would want to kind of throw at you guys. So Shama, if I may request you to quickly fire off the first poll, and let's see what the audience out here thinks.
So we have launched the poll. Let's wait for a minute for the responses then.
So very, very simple question, which is which one is easier to decide? Is it about when you go to a grocery store, picking a brand of shampoo, or is it kind of selecting your next vacation destination? Which one is easier to decide?
Well, if you ask me, Arindam,
yeah,
it's definitely going to be picking up a vacation, because shampoos, it's so confusing. There are so many shampoos out there, and I can never.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. Seems like the audience thinks a bit otherwise, though, like 80%, as it looks like. Feel like picking a brand of shampoo in a grocery store is the easier one.
Right.
Right. But it throws a very important kind of a thing. I don't know if you guys have thought about so much like between these two kind of things. But just to put things in perspective, these are kind of the decisions that we are making on a daily level. right? In our own personal lives. Of course, we are kind of making decisions during our work hours, but outside of our work hours as well, we are making a lot of decisions. So, has it ever occurred to you as to how we go about making these decisions, right? So, let's kind of go a bit into details as to and try to kind of decode it a bit. So, here's how our brain actually thinks. There are two forms of thinking. There's a system one thinking and there's a system two thinking, as we call it. System one thinking is usually kind of very, very fast, very automatic. You don't think about it so much. It's kind of on the spur of the moment you will decide. For me, like picking a kind of shampoo at a grocery store is very, very fast. And I wouldn't spend a lot of time. I'll just pick up the one which I've been using and that's it. Versus system two thinking is usually a lot slower. You put in a lot of effort, you kind of try to reason it with logic, you're very conscious while making that decision. So I'm guessing for a lot of you guys who picked out the fact that picking a shampoo at a grocery store is kind of a lot easier, I'm guessing you would be thinking a lot like me, which is, yeah, like when picking up the next vacation destination, you think about the budget, you think about all the possible options, you think about travel restrictions, if any, you think about visas, if you're looking at international travel, who to travel with, what to take, and a lot of those things you think about and before making that final decision. Versus kind of at a grocery store, uh, you're perhaps a lot more clearer. Okay, these are the few brands which I have used, these are the things which I am looking for, and that's it. Uh, so what I want you guys to realize is there are two forms, the two types of thinking going on in our brains at all different times. 90% of the time, you are using your system one thinking in your brain. That remaining 10% time is actually when system two thinking kicks in. So let's kind of go a bit more into the details then. Now, to kind of decode it a bit further, how our brain thinks is in the form of mental models. Now, what are mental models? Mental models are nothing but kind of chunks of knowledge that represent a concept. We've all studied a lot of things in our school days, in college, right? Concepts around entropy and things like that, right? So these are concepts, which is what our brain stores. And then that results into kind of certain behaviors, which we exhibit, and we see the result that is coming out of the behavior. And if that result is actually kind of telling us that yes, that concept holds, then it reinforces that mental model. So that's the loop that keeps on going on in our brain. So what we're going to kind of talk about today is more focused on the system two thinking, because as product managers, you'll be spending a lot of time making these decisions and focusing on a few mental models which you guys can use in as thinking techniques as product managers, and certain frameworks which you can use to make better decisions. And obviously we'll be talking about, with any framework, with any model, there are always best practices, there are traps. We'll be talking a bit about that. All right, so let's get kind of rolling with that context being set. So here's the first mental model, which is first principles thinking. If you talk to any product manager, I think most of them will kind of say that, or in a lot of discussions also I've heard this being said, oh, this person leads with first principles thinking. And when I first heard it, it really kind of struck me like, okay, what is first principles thinking? I see this being quoted quite a bit, but what is first principles thinking? And obviously I read up a lot about it. And the idea here is that you're trying to break down a complicated problem into its very basic elements and then trying to reassemble them from the ground up. And the first principle, what is the first principle? It is something which, it's an assumption which can stand alone, right? It doesn't need any further validation, right? It cannot be deduced from any other assumption. So you've brought it down to the absolute granular state. And then you are trying to kind of use those first principles to build out your thesis. So this is the first kind of thing which I wanted to talk about, and it's a very essential part of product management. So let's try to kind of decode first principles thinking a bit more. So here's a 6-step model to first principles thinking, right? So that you can think about, you can relate to it, you can apply it. The first step Whenever a thought comes to your mind about solving a particular problem, try to explain the origins of your thinking. Why did it come to my mind? Why am I thinking in this way? Oftentimes this will actually make you realize certain biases that might exist in your mind, which is why you are kind of moving in a particular direction. The second step is to challenge assumptions, which is like, how do I know that this is true? In a lot of organizations, a lot of knowledge is kind of shared. A lot of tribal knowledge exists. And sometimes it's good to challenge certain assumptions because you don't know whether this is true or not. Is there any validation to that? Or is it someone's kind of perception or someone's kind of opinion, which is kind of being talked about? The third step is to kind of look for evidence that how can I back this up? Are there any credible sources which I can look at to see if this can be backed up? The fourth step is to consider alternate perspectives. This is one thing which I've found a lot of people missing out on, that how might others solve this very same problem? If you look at kind of a particular problem, I'm sure like the way Shama would solve it versus the way I would solve it might actually be different, but it's important to consider a lot of these alternate perspectives. It helps you to broaden your thought process. The fifth step is to examine consequences. What will happen if I'm wrong? Um, right? So that's another thing to kind of think about. And the last one is kind of a feedback loop back to step one, which is question that original question which came to your mind. Why did you think about that? It helps you to really understand where your thoughts are emerging from. So these are the 6 steps. And obviously, kind of as you practice this more and more, this is kind of the Socratic way of questioning, asking these questions to yourself, to your thought process, to understand what's going on. And if you see, it's kind of all trying to break up the problem statement a lot to its granular pieces. Now, in terms of product, let's try to simplify it a bit further. All right, when you're working on a particular problem statement, how can you apply these first principles? And I look at it as kind of the who, what, how. All right, easy to remember. So the who part is like related to the problem statement. Who is the user that I'm solving this problem for? Is it even a problem? And what is the business value that kind of gets unlocked if this problem gets solved? The second one is the what part, which is the hypotheses. What do we need to believe in order for this to work? What needs to hold true? So that's the kind of hypotheses led problem solving. And the third thing is, how would we know if the problem has been solved? I'm guessing you would be looking at certain data, certain metrics. So what are those key metrics? That will kind of help you be honest in terms of making sure that the problem actually gets solved. So the who, what, how, easy to remember. And that's the first framework. The first mental model we talked about is the first principles thinking. The first framework we are talking about is the who, what, how. Now, the challenge here, though, is the fact that 9 out of 10 people don't lead with first principles thinking, and that's the trap that you need to be wary of. You'll be working as a product manager, you'll be working with a lot of your stakeholders and your customers. And the challenge is that most of your stakeholders and your customers will not lead with first principles thinking. They will lead with analogous thinking. That's the counter to first principles thinking. So now what is analogous thinking? So let's take an example. This is the humble search bar made popular by Google, all right? And you see the same thing on so many sites. Any site which has a search functionality, you will see the exact same thing, right? With that same exact magnifying glass. And now on voice also the exact same icons, right? Pretty much the exact same thing. Have you ever wondered why that is the case? It is because of the fact that when you're looking at it from a consumer standpoint, they always try to have a reference point. They've seen search working on Google in this particular way, and they would start expecting search to work the exact same way in any other platform. So which is why kind of when building out products, you need to be sometimes wary of the fact that are you really trying to make the consumer learn something which is a completely new behavior, or are you riding on existing behaviors? Especially when you're working on products which are maybe not of daily use. In terms of frequency of use, there are different kinds of products, right? So maybe you're using a WhatsApp multiple times during the day. You are perhaps using certain products like maybe LinkedIn. You're using certain times a week, and there are certain products which maybe you are using maybe a few times in a month, like a big basket or something like that. And then there are certain products which you're using maybe one time in a year, maybe clear tax or something when filing your taxes. Now, think about it, like if ClearTax suddenly starts to make its consumers learn a completely new behavior, it's going to pretty much mostly is going to kind of fail because of the fact that those behaviors have been learned on other platforms of more frequent usage by these consumers. And it'll be a very, very steep task to change that consumer behavior. So that's the kind of thing that you need to be wary of, that the fact that your stakeholders, most of your stakeholders, and a lot of your most of your consumers are not going to think in the first principles way of thinking. They'll be using analogous thinking. So that's the first kind of model, the first framework, and the trap to be wary of. Moving on to the second one, right? And I'm not trying to create a Microsoft logo out there if that's what it has come out to be, but the second framework, the second model rather, is the mental model is about 2x2 thinking. Uh, as product managers, we oftentimes face a trade-off decision. Should I do this or that? That kind of decision always keeps on coming to us. And if you try to kind of focus on this and try to map it onto a 2x2 matrix, you will see that you will get your answer relatively in a much better way. So now let's take a few examples, right? Many times we look at, okay, this is the impact that this can generate, this particular problem is solved, but this is the effort that is required to build out this product which will solve this problem. So these are kind of competing forces, right? The effort and the impact. These are all both competing forces. So try to kind of map the 2x2 in terms of competing forces. Similarly, size of the opportunity when you're thinking about a particular business to invest in, or the alignment with the strategic focus of the organization. These are competing forces. So when you map the competing forces on the two axes and then try to kind of see what happens, you will be able to figure out the decision or the strategy for each different kind of cohort a lot easier, in a lot easier manner. So if you think about it at an organization level, and this is what I call as the reversible consequential matrix, pretty much most of what we do as product managers, it can be mapped in each of these four quadrants. Is the action reversible? Is what I'm going to kind of roll out, is this reversible or is it an irreversible change? And is it going to have consequential impact or is it going to be inconsequential? When you think about it from an organization standpoint. And you'll see like most of what product managers would be doing would fall into each of these buckets. The strategy is going to be very, very different for work falling in each of these buckets. So for example, if you're working on something which is irreversible and consequential, example, let's say there's work going on in terms of changing its business model. I'll give an example from my TripAdvisor days. TripAdvisor back in the day used to operate on a lead generation kind of a model. It still does, but the operating model at that point in time was that the prices will not be shown, but I'll have a button saying click to see prices, and it'll open up 5 different windows, one for Priceline, one for booking, and one for other booking partners and all. Now, We were trying to move to a different business model, which was that we would be showing the prices up front, which meant that the number of clicks would actually now go down because the user is going to choose one out of the five based on the prices. So the number of like lead generating traffic would actually kind of volume of that traffic would go down, but the price you can charge for that generation of that lead is going to increase. So that was a kind of big business model change, and it was an irreversible change, and it would have a consequential impact. So we took time to really decide about it and really think through all the pieces and then move forward. Versus, uh, we used to kind of run a lot of experiments to see, okay, which one will kind of give us a lot more conversion, right? And across the board, there are a lot of those optimization experiments which are run. Those are a lot more reversible, but might have consequential impacts, which is where experimentation is the right strategy to adopt. At the same time, there are a few which are reversible and inconsequential, and the idea there is to kind of not to delay and to kind of act quickly so that you can learn about it and move on. And there will be a few which will be irreversible but inconsequential, and it's best to kind of delegate those to maybe ops and other teams so that they can work on it. So this is the second framework to keep in mind: reversible consequential matrix. It'll kind of help you make a lot of decisions a lot better and figure out the strategy to adopt for each one of these. Now, for each of these, we talked about the fact that there will be certain traps. Now, similarly on this as well, from my experience, what I've seen is not all your stakeholders will align on the competing forces that we talked about earlier. Because they might just say like, oh no, like you're looking at it in the wrong way, the competing forces should be different, which might kind of change the course of the discussion oftentimes, because don't forget the fact that a lot of the stakeholders will have different interests and different motivations when working with you on a particular problem statement. So this is something to be kind of wary of as you try to apply the 2x2 matrix. We've covered two mental models, two frameworks. Let's kind of talk about the third one now, and perhaps one which I've seen it from very close quarters, multiple times during my during my kind of career. It's called second order thinking, and a lot of PMs I've seen, like, they focus mostly on the actions that they're taking and the outcome that those actions are going to kind of give them, right? Thinking more in a silo. But many times you need to really think what happens next, right? Okay, you've kind of driven a particular action from the consumer, a particular outcome, but what really goes on to happen next? Because if you don't think about it, you might be missing a lot of things. And we'll be talking about it in a simple example in the following slides. And what can really help you figure that out is funnels or loops. You might have heard about the funnel concept, like the pirate metrics and all of that, or growth loops. These really help you decipher or kind of figure out what happens next. For example, you might be just kind of sometimes optimizing for getting more impressions, but are you really thinking about whether it's translating to views, and those views translating to clicks, or those clicks translating to actions? If you don't think about it, many times you might end up burning in a very bad way. Similarly, let's talk about loops. An example about loops is a user comes in, transacts on the platform, writes a review. The review then gets indexed in search engines, which helps other buyers to really find that product. And then the other buyer ends up transacting on the platform. The loop gets closed. Now, the thing is, if you really don't think about the fact that while soliciting the review, I need to kind of really store it in a way that it can be indexed by search engines, then that loop never completes. And you will not be able to get a lot of the goodness for which you had kind of really set out for. Similarly, if you're really trying to optimize only one part of the funnel without thinking for the other parts of the funnel, it doesn't help. And many times I've seen that happen a lot of people will focus only on the acquisition part, but they will not think about the activation or the retention part of it, because of which the funnel will be a very, very leaky funnel, which doesn't help at all. So as product managers, you need to really think about what happens next. And that's the second order thinking mental model. You might have seen examples like these on a lot of e-commerce platforms, many kind of transactional platforms like hotel booking sites, etc. Also, hurry only to left, hurry offer expires in so much time. Uh, Now, these are kind of classic gamification techniques, because it really, really brings out that fear factor, in kind of the fear of missing out kind of a factor amongst the consumers. And that forces kind of, that's a nudge for the users to act. Now, we had kind of at Flipkart also, we had kind of instrumented a similar kind of a thing, and we rolled it out. And what we had not initially thought of was the fact that this is something which can drive users to make hurried decisions, not well thought out decisions, uh, which sometimes leads to the consumer then getting the product, and then, or maybe even before getting the product, canceling the order. So it might lead to unnecessary cancellations or returns, thus kind of increasing your costs. So that's kind of an example for you out here. Like, if you don't think about what happens next, many times you will get an undesirable income, and you will be, so instead of operating in a silo, think through the entire consumer experience, and which is where funnels or loops can really help you decipher that. Now, the challenge here with second order thinking, though, is that many a times it can lead to the impact assessment taking a long enough time. Example that it gave you, which is on an e-commerce site, obviously you can kind of really figure out whether this kind of a gamification technique of urgency messaging is this having a very positive impact on the gross conversion. But if you have to look at net conversion, then you have to wait for the entire returns window of 30 days to be over, and only then you can actually get the right assessment for this kind of a product launch. So many times when you're uh, applying the second order thinking, it can lead to impact assessment taking a lot longer, and you need to be patient with that. So that's the kind of a third model and the third framework that we've talked about. Let's go on to the fourth one, which is probabilistic thinking. We've all read about probability and statistics in our school and college days. We know what it is. It's the process of using logic, and we try to kind of estimate, to try to kind of determine the outcome of an action, right? Now, where does probabilistic thinking actually come in very handy for product managers, especially when you're figuring out where to place your bets? Now, if you think about it from a product manager's standpoint, uh, we work on multiple different kinds of problem statements. And the way I like to visualize it is it's a product pyramid. Uh, at the very foundational part of it, at the very base of it, is are things like tech debt, or solving for certain customer issues, certain bugs in production. Those are certain things which we work on. Then there are certain things which are immediate metric movers, and that's what I call it as the core. And then there is the third piece, which is the strategic part of it, which is the long-term metric movers. Uh, these may take a bit more time, maybe a quarter or 6 months, for it to start showing that impact. Uh, but it will show some impact there. And then the last bit is kind of the moonshots, as we call it, the big bets, which you're not sure whether it's going to work out or not. If it works out, it'll be a big kind of win, very different kind of area which you might be getting into. But the risks are also much, much higher. So you can think about it again. If you try to apply a 2x2 out here, you'll see the risk versus return, and you'll be able to see all the four kind of fitting in the four quadrants. So I think that's one of the ways in which I like to visualize any roadmap which I kind of work on. It's called the product pyramid. You need to have a healthy mix of all the four, because if you're just putting all your resources on only the big bets, then your overall business is going to suffer. If you focus only on the foundational pieces and the core pieces, you are not innovating enough, right? So that's the challenge. So that's the kind of thing that you need to be wary of. Now, given that you are working across so many different types of products and different types of features, uh, how do you actually prioritize them, right? So prioritization is an evergreen kind of a challenge for product managers. We do it on a daily basis. We try to prioritize. Now, the thing is, how do you kind of go about prioritizing in a way that there is a lot of objectivity to it and not just subjective, right? Many times I've seen it becoming very subjective because this person feels this is the way it should be done, and that's it, right? But if you try to bring in a bit of objectivity, that's where the RICE scorecard, as it's sometimes called, reach, impact, confidence, and effort to develop. This kind of a product scoring actually helps a lot. Now, think about how it works. Um, so, these are the four parameters: reach, impact, confidence, and effort to develop. Now, what we've done out here is we've created a scale ranging from 1 to 10, and with kind of the gradient being kind of called out for each of these parameters. For example, a 1 would stand for a reach of 1 million, and a 10 would stand for a reach of 10 million, right? Now, similarly for impact, also 5 bips to 100 bips and things like that. Now, for any product feature that you're working on, try to grade those product features on each of these parameters. And once you have that, apply this kind of a scoring mechanism: reach cross impact cross confidence divided by the effort to develop. And that gives you a score. Once you have that score, you will see your stack rank automatically come in, right? So that's a very objective way of coming up with it. Having said that, sometimes the challenge is that aligning stakeholders on what a product feature will be able to achieve, right? Many people might kind of say that, oh no, the reach is going to be 50 million, right? And you're underestimating it. So sometimes the more you do it, you'll be able to kind of practice it a lot more, and that's where experience comes in handy. But this is one framework which I found to be pretty handy, as it helps a lot in terms of prioritization and getting a lot of stakeholders also on board. Now, the challenge here is that, or the challenges I've seen product managers face is kind of, you're using probabilistic thinking to decide, but many times I've seen product managers, after deciding, they would revisit and try to tinker around with the values to sometimes let some of their biased thought processes come in to see, okay, I really wanted this particular product feature to go out, but the scoring is not working out. So the scoring is showing that this product feature is kind of on the lower side in terms of priorities. So let me tinker around with the numbers a bit more and try to make it move upwards, right? So don't second guess yourself, because then you're not being objective, which is the very aim of this particular framework. Uh, don't tinker with it unless and until you have new information. If there is new information based on certain data, certain insights that you might have gathered, which helps you to figure out, oh, maybe I need to kind of change or relook at the scoring, then it's fine. But don't second guess yourself on what was the outcome. So that's one thing that you guys should be wary of, right? And yeah, so let's kind of keep moving on. Just hold on one second, facing the problem. Yeah. So now the last model that I wanted to kind of talk about, the last mental model, is that of inversion. And it's perhaps the one which is the trickiest to master. And what inversion is like is kind of, it's a way of thinking to uncover what you don't want to go wrong. And how it helps you is, it helps you to figure out potential errors or roadblocks that may not be evident on first glance. Most product managers have seen are usually kind of think in a forward-looking manner, right? And we'll talk about it through a few examples in the next following slides. But inversion thinking technique can really help you like put the spotlight on certain roadblocks that you might encounter in your while trying to kind of go after your objective. Now, what's the framework to apply out here to kind of go with inversion thinking technique? So the first thing is kind of define the problem, Okay. What is the problem that you're trying to solve for? What's the objective? Next is invert it. And the question to ask is, what would you have to do to guarantee the failure of your objective? Right? So always we're obviously kind of trying to optimize for the success, but this model actually inverts it. It's like, what is it that you have to do to guarantee the failure of your objective? And then the third step is to fix it, which is what would you have to do to avoid the failure that you identified in step number 2? All right. So let's take a quick example here. So let's say the problem statement is that I need to acquire new customers. Okay. And if you look at it in a forward looking manner, you would think about it with the fact that the like I will actually maybe have to give a nudge to the new users and try to convert them into customers by giving them an additional hook or a additional promotional offer, and that will help me kind of convert them into new customers. Now let's invert it, right? So invert it is kind of what's the absolute failure of that, that your new customers are not increasing. So that's your starting point. You are at a state where your new customers are not increasing. All right. What will lead you to that particular state? What might lead you to that particular state is that the users are not having trust on your platform, and which is why they are not ending up transacting on your platform, which is why you are kind of not seeing your new customer growth kind of increasing. Now, in order to build trust on your platform, what is it that you need to kind of do, right? You need to maybe think about what can bring trust onto my platform. Is it certain reviews that get added? Is it certain other things that need to happen? Is it that I need to think about accessibility? All of those particular things. Should I tinker around with the returns period and give them a free returns kind of a policy and things like that? So you see, the entire discussion then changes, right? You're focusing a lot more on how to avoid the failure situations. And this is something which can prove in very, very handy to uncover a lot of blind spots, a lot of roadblocks which you might otherwise face. And this is something which is perhaps, I feel, the hardest to master because our brain usually doesn't operate that way. Our brain usually tries to move forward and tries to kind of think forward. We usually don't look a lot backwards from the end state, right? It's a very counterintuitive way of thinking. So which is why this is a very, very difficult one to kind of master. And it happens as you kind of practice it more and more. But it's a very important one, I feel, over the last few years. I've seen that kind of really coming in very, very handy. And in terms of kind of something that you need to be wary of is the fact that most of your stakeholders will think forward and optimize for success versus kind of avoiding failure. So because that's how we usually think, right? We always try to optimize for success. But the thing is, between succeeding and avoiding failure, right? So what is it that you're going to be choosing, right? So I think that's the kind of dilemma there. The question is kind of how can you mitigate your risk, right? It should be something like if it's heads, then I win, right? And but if it's tails, I don't lose, right? So that's the mentality with which you need to kind of operate. That can really give you a lot of gains in the longer term. So in summary, if you think about it, what we have discussed over the last few minutes is we've talked about certain mental models. We talked about the first principles. We talked about 2x2 matrix. We talked about second order thinking. We talked about probabilistic thinking. And we talked about inversion thinking techniques. The frameworks we talked about are who, what, how. We talked about reversible and consequential matrix. We talked about funnels and loops as frameworks. We talked about the product scoring and the product pyramid as frameworks. And we talked about the last one, which is define, invert, and fix in the inversion thinking technique, the framework that you can possibly use. But these are mental models and frameworks, but at the core of it, I still believe it's the attitude as a product manager that you operate with. It's the curiosity, it's the tenacity, it's the empathy, and not leading with any ego, right? You should be able to you should have that curious mindset to ask a lot of these questions. You should have that tenacity to operate, and a high agency product manager, for example, like regardless of the situation around me, I should be able to kind of find my way around. The empathy towards your stakeholders, empathy towards your consumers, so that you can engage in very fruitful discussions. And finally, detach yourself from your ideas, and perhaps that's the hardest one to do. But yeah, I think these are the things which kind of really can prove in very, very handy. Once again, disclaimer is that I'm not a master in any of these kind of thinking techniques. These have been my learnings. I've tried to kind of master it. I don't think I've mastered it yet, but it has proved really, really helpful and beneficial for me. Obviously, there is a lot of reading material also, which is online. You can read up more on that to get to know a lot more into the detail, to get into the details a lot more. But something for you guys to think about, because as product managers, decisions are something which we'll be making day in and day out. And if there is a better way to make decisions, it always comes in very, very handy. So yeah, so I think, and since I asked you guys to be curious as kind of one of the attitudes for product managers, happy to take any questions. That's pretty much what I wanted to share, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Arindam. Great insights. And yes, there are a lot of curious minds in the audience because I see a lineup of questions for you already.
Sure.
Just give me a moment to share the screen and we'll start with the Q&A. So audience, I encourage you all to ask your questions to the Zoom Q&A window or on the LinkedIn thread. So let's take this first question, Arindam. So the first question, if you see in the Q&A, is by Manish.
Yeah.
So how do these mental models, especially product pyramid and product score, change with respect to mature B2B products where the intention is uplift, modernize them from legacy state?
Yeah. No, so see, I think every product will go through its own life cycle. All right. So there will be certain product lines which will be a lot more mature, and I can understand maybe where you're coming from, where you might not be thinking a lot around kind of the big bets or the moonshots and stuff like that. So then, whichever are the tracks that you're kind of operating in, I think the product score, the RISE scorecard that we talked about, should definitely hold there, and which means that you should be able to figure out the parameters in terms of the metrics that this particular product is going to move, and the effort to develop and the confidence to achieve that, right? So the product scoring mechanism should definitely hold regardless of the state that the product is in, the life cycle stage of the life cycle, product life cycle that it is in. Product pyramid, yes, perhaps you may not have one of the components. You might be a lot heavier on the foundational pieces because you might be in a bit of a maintenance mode, and things like that, right? Maybe the moonshots or the big bets might not exist. But I think that's also an opportunity area at times, because then you are reimagining it. So if you think about product life cycles, after maturity, it also kind of presents that opportunity to come up with a new product line altogether, right? Because you would be having a lot more insights and you can reimagine a different product line altogether. So yes, I think that's how I would look at it. So just today I was reading it in the news that Apple is thinking of replacing the iPad mini with a foldable iPhone, right? That's the kind of example here, right? So like the iPad mini perhaps has reached its kind of end state in the life cycle, but the foldable iPhone is something which is the new one, right? So that's the way I would suggest you to kind of think about it.
Right. Other than the second part to this question, I mean, would you like to take that? He asked us also, how do we measure RI in such products?
Yeah, so I think R is for reach, and reach is basically how many consumers is this going to touch. So many times we operate on certain product features which may be targeted to a certain cohort of the consumers, right? It may not apply to all the consumers. That's where reach actually helps to figure that out. And the second is the impact part of it. However, you are measuring the impact, whichever is your North Star metric, uh, how do you kind of really take that into account? And like I gave you the example of conversion, right, which is kind of in bips of kind of conversion impact. You can measure that. But yeah, so at the end of the day, you need to figure out what your North Star metric is to figure out the impact. Yeah.
Thank you for the great question, Manish. I hope Arindam has answered it for you. So we'll take this next question from Nida. How do we decide the score of each metric here? It could be subjective as well. Who scores it?
Yeah, very good question actually. So I think this is this sometimes I've seen that this becomes a question in itself, that okay, how are we scoring this? Now the idea is kind of the idea is about having a more of an objective manner, right? So what my experience says that it's usually better when all the stakeholders together score it, right? So that we know exactly how the scoring is happening. Now, think about each of the parameters when you're talking about impact, right? So then you need to do an estimate on the impact. And how can you do an estimate on the impact? It's either by looking at competitive data points, or you can look at your past kind of data to see certain learnings that you might have had over kind of a period of time on certain kinds of experiments. So you will be able to get a fairly good idea of what is the kind of BIPS impact that you can get, right? Or what is the kind of North Star metric movement that you can get. So that needs to be led with that impact assessment. As product managers, whenever you're working on something, you need to really figure out that what is the overall business value that I'm going to unlock. And that's where the impact assessment part comes in, and that's where kind of an understanding on the business side will really help. But what I have seen in my personal experience is whenever you involve all the stakeholders like product, engineering, design, and kind of business together, the product scoring is a lot better and a lot more mature, because each one would question the other. And at the end of the day, it's a group coming up with the product score. Uh, Effort to develop, I always have my engineering lead kind of take that call, because at the end of the day, in terms of engineering timelines, also he or she is the person who is going to kind of commit to the timeline. So it's important that the effort to develop comes from the engineer, or if there is a design effort involved, from the designer. Yeah. Should we go on to the next question? Shama?
Oh, sorry. I was on mute. I'm so sorry. Right. So there's this next question from Rohit Watwani on LinkedIn. He has actually asked you three back-to-back questions. So
Okay.
let's take the first question. So Hari, only two left, etc., is now available as a nudge on every website these days. Don't you think customer is aware about it and not many get influenced by it? I personally ignore it now. What are the other type of nudges which can be used to create fear factor? Can you please share some learning of Flipkart?
Yeah, so I think, and that's where kind of really understanding who your customer cohorts are becomes very, very kind of essential. See, as consumers, we go through, like we mature as we, uh, like, as we grow old on the internet, right? So just like you're saying that you've seen a lot of sites have this, and now you've kind of gotten a bit kind of immune to that. Uh, but at the same time, there are a lot of consumers who are coming online for the very first time. All right, for them, they would be seeing it kind of very differently, and that nudge will be a lot stronger. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is you need to be ethical out here, right? Which is where, from the Flipkart side of things, all the information that you see, even if those are gamification nudges, are always true information, right? There's nothing like I'm trying to fake it. Uh, Now, each nudge will actually elicit a varying degree of behaviors from the users, depending on how mature your users are. So, for someone who might be seeing this for the very first time, the trigger would be a lot stronger versus someone who has been kind of immune, like you were saying. You've seen it so many times that you'll perhaps ignore it. Then that trigger will not be that strong enough. In terms of certain other gamification techniques or game design principles being applied in non-shopping and non-game contexts, especially in shopping. There are quite a few actually. Like you need to think about what is the emotion that you want to evoke at the end of the day. That's where game design principles come in. Um you can kind of play on urgency. You can play on social proofing many times, like giving because it helps instill that confidence that yes, I can buy from this platform. So that's a very popular one as well. There are certain delight factors many times which you can use that you did not expect it and it was kind of a surprise for you. Those kind of techniques also work out quite well. We have had some good kind of good results coming out from certain techniques focused around delight factors. So I think there's a wide ranging thing, but at the core of it, don't apply those techniques very blindly. Try to really figure out what is the emotion that I'm trying to evoke from the consumer, and accordingly then move forward.
Thank you, Arindam. Rohit, I encourage you to connect with Arindam offline for the other questions because we have to take questions from the Q&A window now. Thank you so much for the question. And so the next question is from actually anonymous attendee. How to balance data versus intuition while making these decisions?
Yes, I think that's the kind of challenge always, right? So from the data, you need to glean out the insights, and from the insights, you need to kind of form your belief system first, right? So I think that's where the intuition comes in. The intuition sometimes is kind of very much driven by the experience that you've had, right? The only thing to keep in mind though is like make sure that it's make sure there are no biases creeping in. So many times there are biases that start creeping in if you have really spent a lot of time in this domain, which can sometimes take it in a different direction because you're not open to certain different other perspectives or not open to certain things which might have changed over time. Example being like the way Gen Z, which is kind of people born after 1996, operate uh, on social media versus the way we operate is very, very different, right? Now, if you expect that, okay, social media is something which is kind of the same and everyone is going to operate in the same way, that's going to be very different. So I think the idea here is to make sure that you are really thinking it through and you're using a combination of both quantitative data and qualitative data and trying to glean insights from that data, which will kind of feed into forming your belief system overall, which should guide on the intuition side of things.
Right. So we'll take this next question from Bharat. Also, audience, we are loving the enthusiasm. I can see so many questions still coming up. We'll try and cover as much, but due to time constraints, we might have to cut short. But so this next question is from Bharat. Arindam, where do these decision models fit in Agile?
I'm not quite sure if I follow that though, but in Agile, if you think about it, so I firmly believe that Agile is a mindset first, right? So, and if you think about it in using these kind of mental models, it helps you to kind of make those calls a lot better, right? So think about it in this way: like if you're grooming your backlog, right, uh, you will at the end of the day need some framework to operate on how to kind of groom it, right? Which one should come first, should come next, and all of that. Which is where these kind of frameworks and thinking models can really help. So agile is kind of a mindset with which you operate. These mental models and frameworks are kind of are tools to help you think, right? So that's the way. So I think both go hand in hand.
Right. Thank you for that. And the next question is from LinkedIn, and this is from Prashant. When your product features are dependent on features of another product, what is the best way to manage conflicting priorities between the two products?
Yeah, like a classic one, right? So, which pretty much everyone faces
Yes.
in product management. Um, I think first thing to figure out is kind of, are the motivations aligned, right, for both the product owners? Because many times that's the core of the problem, where each one is trying to operate in their own silo, and that's where the challenges are rooted. So first thing is to align on uh, how each one can help the other in succeeding and achieving their own outcome. Because if you come to a same page onto the same page with that, right, then the rest of the kind of pieces fall together very, very easily. Uh, the kind of the thing is kind of, if you really try to focus or have an attitude of that, okay, let me figure out how I can help the other person, then the other person will also open up to figure out how that other person can help you. So that's the way I would suggest you to kind of move forward. But again, I think in kind of complex organizations, this is perhaps one of the topmost problems that every product manager goes through.
Right. So Arindam, the next question is to you actually from me. Do we take few more questions, or how are you for time today?
Yeah, I
We
think
have a few more.
no, I think I can take a few more, so it's fine.
Okay, great. So the next question is where and how do you track the results from any of these frameworks that you mentioned?
Where and how do you track the results from any of these frameworks? Uh, it should show up in terms of the outcomes that you're going after, right? So let's take an example, the second order thinking that we talked about. Uh, like, if we were to kind of go ahead and launch that hurry to left, only not think about the possible impact on returns, possible impact on customer contacts and things like that, uh, then you would perhaps have a situation wherein a product owner from the customer support team would come in, or the returns product team would come in saying that, hey, my metrics have gone kind of bonkers because of this particular feature, and then you would end up rolling back that particular feature set. So the thing is kind of, overall, if you make the right decisions using these frameworks, you will be able to move forward a lot more easily without like unnecessary roadblocks coming your way in the middle of the product development process. So I would say kind of, you can track it based on overall impact on the outcomes, and also from a productivity standpoint. Yeah.
Right. So we'll take another question from Nida. She asks us, what are the different ways, sources of identifying problems? It's a
Okay.
little too generic, but would you want to address that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit broad there, but
Right.
what I've seen is figure out like which is the target segment you're going after. Really try to understand, like start with that maybe, and go deep to understand the mental models with which they are operating in, the structures, the societal structures they are living in, and their surroundings, how they are operating, and only then you will be able to kind of figure that out. The other way is looking at data over longer term horizons, and trying to search for patterns in that data. If you look at data over shorter horizons, you'll not be able to see kind of wide ranging patterns. But if you look at it over a longer term horizons, you will be able to spot them. So yeah, I think those would be the two which I would leave you with, but it's kind of a very broad question that way. Yeah.
Right. So Arindam, are you on the Q&A window? Because this next question is a little elaborate, although I will read it to the audience, but
This
you will
from
have to go
Vijay?
through it once. This is from Vijay Vanaparthi.
Yeah, I'm just reading that. So,
Right. So the audience, the question is, when you start with first principles thinking and you start breaking the problem down into the most basic elements, often we may arrive at some pieces which we know well, and yet some pieces which we may not be aware of. How do we deal with these pieces that we do not know well? At the moment, I would leverage what I already know to inquire into and learn more about the pieces that I do not know much of. Is this a hybrid of first principle and analogous thinking approaches?
yeah, no, I think it's a very good question.
Right.
But that's the beauty of the first principles thinking model, because it also kind of opens up a lot of things which you would not be knowing about. and where the next step for you then is to kind of really figure out how you can know about those particular things. Um, and that's the best part of it, right? So it forces you to kind of learn about certain things which you had not kind of thought about or had not learned about, because only then, only once you learn about the different elements, can you actually figure out the right way to assemble them to come up with a solution, right? So yeah, so I think I would say kind of if you're already trying to apply it, the next step is kind of try to go deep into the ones which you don't know. It'll aid your learning and it'll help you to form a holistic picture to come up with the right solution.
Sure. So Arindam will take this one last question from Manish. I think that would be a good question to end the note. So this is, can you give some examples of funnel or loops?
Yeah, so funnel, a very easy example to give is the one which you guys might have read about. It's the R metrics or the pirate metrics many times, which is called, which is acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral. So you acquire a customer, you activate a customer. So acquire a customer maybe like registering or kind of coming to the platform. Activation maybe registering on the platform. Retention is kind of coming back to the platform. Revenue is finally transacting on the platform. And referral is kind of bringing another person to the platform, right? So that's an example of funnels, which is very popular in the growth circles. Loops, again, very kind of popular, made very popular by Nir Eyal when he wrote the book on Hooked, and growth. Like people who are working on growth think more around loops nowadays, to make sure that the entire experience is thought through and you're not operating in a silo. So example, again, which I gave for user generated content, for example, uh, you get the user to come in, perform an action like writing a review. Then the review gets indexed by search engines, and then that review kind of gets found when someone else is searching for a particular product, and then that user lands on that particular product again, and maybe ends up becoming a transactor of that particular product. So that's how the loop gets completed. Several such other examples are there. I'm pretty sure online also you'll find a lot of good resources on understanding growth loops. Again, it's a very deep topic, so I think I'll do injustice if I just kind of talk about it in 2 minutes. But there are different types of loops as well. There are paid loops, there are viral loops, there are content loops. So it's quite a deep topic, so it'll be kind of difficult to kind of go into the depths of each one of them right now. But a lot of good online resources which you can read up.
Thank you so much for that, Arindam. But I will have to ask you to pick the best question for us so that we give the reward of the free digital course from the institute. Could you help us do that?
Okay, I think
We have had so many questions, so I don't know if you can identify them. But if you can see in the chat window, I mean, sorry,
yeah,
the Q&A window,
yeah, I'm seeing that. Yeah.
right? So there are a few in the dismissed one, the answered one. So I've
Yeah,
put that.
yeah. So yeah, there are a few which I really liked. I think the data versus intuition question was pretty good, and but I think that was from an anonymous attendee, so I don't know who it was. But um, the other one, uh, yeah, I think Vijay's question was also pretty good. Yeah.
All
Um,
right, then great. Vijay, congratulations on winning the free digital course. We will
yeah.
connect with you offline and share the code. And also, there is this food for thought from Ganesh. I actually wanted to mention that. He says, great perspective and insight. Like we have EQ, IQ, probably this can be like DQ, which is a decision quotient. Should inculcate at early stage of our careers to be a great decision makers. What do you say to that, Arindam?
Yeah, I think like echo the thought. I think I don't know whether it's going to be called DQ, but yeah, I think as we all grow, kind of in our careers, we will be making a lot of decisions, and the more comfortable we get with making decisions, the better off we will be. And to get more comfortable, sometimes practicing some of these thinking techniques and these frameworks goes a long way in kind of helping us take the right decisions. Because also keep in mind the decisions that you take are going to impact not just yourself, it's going to impact consumers, it's going to impact your peers, it's going to impact kind of the overall organization, right? So I think that's why kind of applying these and trying to practice these can go a long way. Yeah.
Great session, Arindam. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
yes, in view of time constraints, we have to end the Q&A here, audience. Thanks for the participation, though. We love the enthusiasm. And for any further questions, you can connect with Arindam over LinkedIn or other mediums. I hope that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So moving on, we have enjoyed having you with us, Arindam. It's been a complete pleasure.
Thank you.
Please accept this certificate of appreciation from the Institute. So the QR code on the certificate will take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that we have created for you. And the recording of the session also you can see there.
Oh,
so please share it within your network. We will do the same. We will share the recording on our YouTube channel.
Sure.
We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and amazing insights drawn from years of research and experience in the industry. I'm certain that our audience will definitely benefit from the methods you suggested and get ahead in their career. Thank you once again for joining us, Arindam. It's been a great session.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you.
Right. And audience, thank you for joining in. It's been great interacting with you all. Do not forget to register for the upcoming webinar tomorrow. So with that note, I end tonight's session. Happy learning and stay skilled. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.